Hello there and welcome to COH3 News with me, your host AE, a community veteran of 10 plus years from Company Heroes 1 to COH2 Alpha, Beta, and then 8 or 9 years of COH2's progression. And hopefully I can use those eyes to help inform you what you should be making of what Johnny Boy here is saying to you. This is the first big bit of feedback based on your feedback after the campaign alpha went out. And this is kind of the document that shows that they're working on your concerns. And it wouldn't be this kind of tone if there weren't concerns. So it's good that they're being addressed, let's say. First and foremost, UI and UX, that's interface and experience for the user. They're addressing it. It's one paragraph, and it's basically saying ASAP, next month, and mock-ups. And they're acknowledging that it was bad. They haven't said as much, but it wouldn't be first and foremost on this document if it wasn't now seen as objectively bad. We passed the threshold of subjectivity, and we entered the realm of, yeah, we know it's not good, we're going to fix it. And that's all we need to hear, fam. I shouldn't be using that word at 32. Whatever. We've also got... I say these words to annoy the young people at work. I've got 20-year-olds in my team, and I say fam now to annoy them. It's now creeping into my everyday usage. That's not good. The minimap has to change as well, and they are addressing it. We need it bigger, we need those garish buttons and that bottom bar removing, etc. That's good news. Next, graphics, art and lighting. And that's most easily shown as, oh dear God, my eyes. And, oh, so much better. And then again, too light, not as bright. Way too cartoonish, slightly less so. And I think this is the best one, because the tanks in this and the, those Panzer IIIs look so much better. It's really nice to look at. And that's just fantastic now. Looks like a game you're going to be... The textures... I always get drawn to foliage and the textures of plants. It's something I always look at to see if a game looks how I expect it to look. And this already looks better. On this, the Tunisian kind of paint or whatever it is on these houses, look how much better it looks in the post version. Really draws my attention to it. It's a blue we can work with. And then this, the tanks, as I mentioned, but also what it does now is the UI doesn't look as bad when the contrast and saturation is so high, but it really does stand out as not fitting the game now, and I'm just so glad they're working on it. Next, the next bit is controls and camera, and the word I'll point you towards here is mesh. See that mesh? Basically what they're saying is as the camera travels up and down the terrain of Italy and Sicily and all that stuff, it should go up and down accordingly, and they're trying to tell you they haven't finished yet. The maps aren't ready yet for the technology they want to use, which is fair enough. So they get... But also what I think the tone of what they're trying to say is, don't expect a zoomed out perspective in Company of Heroes. This is not Blitzkrieg mod. This is Company of Heroes, and it's actually based on Platoon-based gameplay. The word company, if you wanted to know, is actually from a book called Company of Heroes, which is what Band of Brothers is based on. And the main quote of that is, we were in the company of heroes. So it's about, fraternity with your common soldier, a couple of tanks and a few squads, and that's what you need to be zoomed in to see it. So hopefully they can get the TAC map ready and the mini map ready to a point where it doesn't matter if we're zoomed in to Company Heroes 2 levels. Anyway, going on to international representation, factions and theatres. We're launching with 4 factions. Don't expect the Italians to be one of them. That's basically what they're saying. And to be honest, I would challenge people that think the Italians should be one of those settings if they're doing mid to late war. Because by mid to late war, the Italians went from being players to being sidekicks and then being completely pushed aside, like made irrelevant almost by a lot of the fighting and a lot of the onus being on the Germans carrying the load. So if this is mid to late Mediterranean theatre, of course you're not going to get Italians as a starting faction. I think this game should have been very early war. I think they should have started with the British versus Italy. I would have had no problems with that. I think that would have been so cool, but they clearly want the US involved. They clearly want kind of a slightly mid to late war feel to it. So I can entirely get them not having Italy. However, if they want to release some factions, maybe we can get Russia later on, maybe we can get Italy, maybe we can even get Japan. maybe we're heading towards a place where Kona Heroes is like this ongoing content delivery system. That would be so exciting. We can't wait to see the epic battles. Blah blah blah. They're basically pointing towards that you're not gonna get Italians at launch, but they do hear you, and you will get a lot of Italy in your battle groups. Anyway, and two more things I want to bring to this is the next things I want to see addressed is I want to know what features we're going to have at launch and what we're not. And I would argue that it's better to delay the game 6 months and have a release with fully fleshed out multiplayer features than release two good campaigns with bare bones multiplayer features. If you look at Age of Empires 4, I don't want to be... This is a great video by Spirit of the Law, and he talks about everything they've released in 2022 to try and bring fans back to AoE 4. I don't want to be in that position where I'm having to argue with people saying, oh no, COH3 is actually playable now, which is what I spent the last 9 years trying to do with my tournaments and stuff. I don't want to be in that position. At the very least, we want a customizable hotkeys to be there at launch. I can kind of forgive not having content editor and map making, kind of, maybe, as long as they promise it'll be there 6 months after. And you know, we want bare bones features. But as a content creator, and especially as a tournament organizer, I can't organize tournaments for stuff like GCS or even stuff like the Master League if there's no observer mode. Observer mode is so bare bones these days. Even if it's rudimentary, we need a rudimentary observer mode at launch, because I don't want to be in the position where I'm having to beg people to come back into the game. And I think my feel for the gaming industry, and I'm talking as a commercial chartered commercial accountant right now, my feel for the gaming industry is that the bargaining power of the developer is a little bit higher than they're led to believe. And if they push back on the publisher and say, we need 6 more months, that's a respectable thing to say. It only fools release on their real release date. You know what I mean? Everyone pushes back at least once. The big AAA studios all have one delay in them, and they're allowed one delay. It's almost like how a beta became an alpha, and then an alpha became a pre-alpha. It's kind of like the bargaining, negotiating kind of, with the three stakeholders being the consumer, the developer, the publisher. The publisher finances the thing, the developer has to deliver it, and the consumers obviously buy it. And I feel that part of the whole negotiating network there is the developers kind of expected to have one delay request, and that's what I think Relic should be pushing for here, because this game, with a delay, will be a 90% Metacritic game. Without a delay, will be 80%. With a delay, it will sell so much, and the return on investment will be so much higher, because they have to rebuild their stocks after the failure of Dawn of War 3, and after AoE 4 being kind of above average but not knocking it out the park. They need to knock it out the park now. It's make or break, and the backs are against the wall, and they need 6 more months, in my opinion. That's one segment of my opinion piece on the news. My next segment is on balance issues. And the one I'm going to bring up is something called a recovery vehicle, which can resurrect the wreck of a tank, friend or foe. And this is horrendous for balancing a competitive game, because that means you can't push in with your tanks, you can't base inspect, you can't flank, because if they die, your opponent can build a recovery vehicle and resurrect them, and we can't have that in competitive. And I don't want to be in a position where the developer's like, we made it crazy to get the casuals in, we'll promise we'll balance it later. No. Let's not do it that way. Because I guarantee the casuals listening to this, to be honest, recovery vehicles sound kind of cool. I get you. But it'll only be cool for a few times. But it will really damage the game's viability as a competitive experience that brings so many people in the long run. And I would rather not start with it being zany and then balancing it to reality. I'd rather start a little bit close to reality. So all they need to do is... They can only resurrect enemy tanks if you spend 100% of the resource cost for the tank, or something like that. Or maybe the tanks never perform quite as well as they should do. So, for example, if you resurrect an enemy tank, it always has a damaged engine. and it can never be above 60% health. Something like that. So it's cool that you have an enemy tank in your fold that you kind of got for free, but it actually costs you something and it's never quite as good. There are ways of balancing it, and I want to see Relic make intelligent balancing decisions before they're required to later on. So do it as and build your stock up by making competitively viable decisions early on, rather than making some crazy silly game that loses loads of trust and kind of intelligent stock points, if you want to call it that. Just make it how you expect it to be in the long run from the get-go. I do not want to see zany recovery vehicles that can recover enemy tanks for free, because it will punish the aggressive elements of Company of Heroes play. I've been AE. Let me know what you think of the latest news from Relic, and also the two opinion pieces I made. Firstly, I'm arguing for a 6-month release, and secondly, I want them to balance recovery vehicles before they are required to by the community and 6 months after release. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you have a good weekend. Cheers.